For those might be joining in here for the first time, my name is Ray Walters. I'm with Epic Compliance. I will be your host of today's session. Again, appreciate everybody joining in with us today and taking some time out of your busy schedules. I'm also joined here by my co-host, Mr. Jose Delgado. For those that again might be joining here for the first time, Jose has 20 plus years of experience in healthcare consulting. Currently owns and operates a mental telehealth clinic, has a ton of insight. And today's, let's see, what was it? 2 weeks ago, we talked about OSHA.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago we talked about OSHA,
It's
and
been a hot
honestly,
topic. It's been a hot topic
yeah, with
recently.
everything going on, we figured, and with the expansion of certain rules, we figured that um, workplace violence could do its own session, and there's a reason for that, right? Like OSHA has a piece in regards to hostile work environment. HIPAA has protocols that you need to have in place for it. So just kind of like it goes in spiders to all the alphabet agencies. And honestly, the level of detail is slightly different to meet each one, right? Because you've got to think about it as though, all right, I need to have a set of policies and procedures for workplace violence when it comes to the patients, and then when it comes to employees,
Right.
right? So let's start with the easy one, the low-hanging fruit, the one that everybody traditionally thinks when they think of workplace violence in healthcare, they normally think patients, right? So there are certain places that you're going to have that you have a higher likelihood than others in dealing with workplace violence, right? If you're in a hospital, if you're a hospital that a jail or prison is nearby, if you do Baker Act intakes, so there's quite a bit of pay attention to where the vulnerabilities are in your patient population, right? One that normally doesn't get mentioned but should get mentioned more is anyone that's traveling to patients' homes, because those patients' homes are now extensions of the workplace. You know,
Absolutely.
what is the conversation with patients about putting their dogs away? You know, something as simple as that, because a dog bite goes and just messes everything up, right? Like the employee is obviously injured, the patient's traumatized, depending on the severity, the dog has to get put down. You know what I mean? Like it just spirals so fast.
Just to add to that, I mean that's a situation, believe it or not, that happens more often than you think. I have a friend of a friend. He's an electrician that dealt with a very similar situation. He got bit by a client's dog on premise. And
Yeah.
yeah, not a fun situation to deal with.
Not at all. Not at all, right? So there's certain things that we can do on an administrative side, if for nothing else than for CYA, because accidents are always going to happen. There's always going to be that one scenario that just sneaks through no matter what we do. But on a CYA, on a compliance perspective, we want to knock out the low-hanging fruit and teach our people, hey, these are the basic policies, be ready to adjust with the scenario, right? So
Yeah.
let's deal with one that hits the news common, especially when it comes to anytime there's a nursing strike. Hey, workplace violence at the hospital level because of patients on employees. All right. This is where orderlies come into play. This is where what's the patient to nursing ratio? Hey, what is the difference in the staffing ratio based on the different departments? Because an ER is going to have a different staffing need than an ICU because all the patients are knocked out in ICU, right? So there's a different aspect of this kind of thing where you need to address the scenario that is your office. In an outpatient office, if there is workplace violence from the patient side, it's from a disgruntled patient. But
Yeah.
that's the one that people are least prepared for. So what is the policy? Are all of our doors locked? Or is there staff that is trained on what their role is if there is an active shooter, which is something that your workplace violence protocols need to address? Hey, it's Bobby's job to try to calm the patient down. It's Susie's job to call 911. You know what I mean? Like, and then it's Tammy's job to make sure all the doors are locked, right? And then you split responsibilities accordingly. Yeah, okay, it's Bobby's plan, but Susie's already talking to the patient because the patient's talking to her first. All right, well then Bobby does Susie's plan, and this is where cross training comes into play. Um,
Is this
this is
plan
where
enforced by the OSHA compliance officer, assuming, Jose?
yeah, absolutely, by the compliance officer, but not only the compliance officer, but the executive team,
Yeah.
right? Because if there's an active shooter situation, you're going to end up on the news. Unless maybe you're in Chicago, like, but in most cases, in most places, you're going to end up on the news with an active shooter situation in an outpatient setting, or even in a hospital that always gets popped up. So it always, even if it's for 30 seconds, it gets noticed in the local news. So you want to be able to address these kinds of things. You want to make sure that your incident response team is able to handle these kinds of things. Even so much so that I have seen in certain clinics and settings where there are certain employees that have their concealed carry license and they carry in the office. That is
Very much going to depend
that
on
is
the
an
state that you're in.
organizational conversation that I don't want to touch, just in general. Why? Well, that brings up the next piece. Workplace violence, employee to employee,
Hmm.
right? So how do we deal with this? Because this is an HR problem along with an OSHA problem, along with honestly emotional terrorism, right? So how do we deal with these kinds of situations? How do we prevent it? And then how do we manage it when the crisis comes through? So I'm a big proponent that this starts from the top, right? When it comes to patients creating hostile work environments, I like to address it quickly and I like to address it aggressively in respect of, hey, that's not how we do things. You need to address things. If there are issues, you need to address them directly. You need to address them safely and calmly because it's the only way things are actually going to get done. If not, you're going to end up in a heated situation and no one thinks clearly when everybody's pissed off, right? Like everybody knows how that goes. So we don't want to turn into a bunch of hulks and just rage out. We just want to calm down. Let's address the situation. And then this is where you have a mediator, your HR person, your office manager. In small office settings, they tend to be the same person. In larger settings, those roles are generally separated, right? Your HR versus your compliance officer. And maybe you want both involved, but what is the policy? What is the procedure for that? Notice these things as an office manager, as an executive. You need to notice this stuff before it becomes an issue. We're all in healthcare. We know the value of preventative, prophylactic methodology to medicine. We're all aware of addressing something early is far better than waiting until it metastasizes into something much, much worse, right? So, how do we do it? Right? Generally, what I like to do when it's employee to employee, address one employee separately from the other employee. Then I'll address it together, right? Put them in the same room with someone there, and I like to keep it nice and simple. I don't generally like to pick a side because it's just bad for the organization. I'll tell both parties if you can't figure it out, I'm not firing one of you. I'm firing both of you.
Right.
Because I can't have anybody thinking that they can just win an argument and just start a fight with another employee in our office. It's not a good look. It's not an atmosphere that you're going to want to work in, right? And this is one of the problems that I find in healthcare, and I mean everybody that watches these is definitely aware of it. Morale industry wide is very, very low because people are overworked and they're snapping at each other. So when people are snapping at each other, when tensions are running high, you've got a powder keg on your hands. You've got to do different things. You can, if you see that different people are not working well together, okay, well, you can do the normal HR thing of, all right, guys, let's all go hang out. Let's all go find we're all people at the end of the day and not just coworkers. Alternatively, you can just avoid the problem entirely, putting people on different shifts. You know what I mean? And different and in positions where they don't ever really have to interact. And if they do have to interact, it's sparingly for something specific and everybody moves on. Um, One of the major issues that I see with workplace violence nowadays is that it's not even just physical violence, but it's the emotional violence. It's the mental health. So it's a matter of how do we address things without addressing it so harshly that someone feels attacked, right? Um, why are people upset? Oh, well, so and so sent me a message to do something, and I didn't like the way they said that. Well, we need to make sure that everybody understands written word is generally difficult to get tone, right? Tone is something that can cause a lot of fights when you're talking to somebody. What happens through text? I can't tell you how many times my wife and I have almost started arguments because one of us read the text a wrong way. That's with my wife. You know what's going to happen with with my coworkers? Like it's easy to see that stuff explode out of proportion if we don't come in and say, "Hey, did you mean it this way?" Okay, no, that's just me and me attributing personally intent behind something that there was no intent, right? So these are different things that can be trained on. These are different things that can be worked on.
Jose, I've seen this in a few organizations where they'll do like an annual evaluation of the team, and everybody sort of answers a questionnaire and basically leaves each other feedback, but it's anonymous.
Yeah.
Um, that's could be a good way to address some of these outliers as well, especially if if you have an issue with somebody or it's
Yes and no, right? Because what could start as well intentioned could be seen as ganging up on somebody. And then you've got a hostile workplace environment from the
that is
employee
a
to management.
possibility.
You know what I mean, right?
If if
So we've got to be
multiple
careful with
employees
how
have an
we
issue with
do.
one person, agree. That could happen. Could
Yeah.
happen.
Or it's bullying in the workplace, right? Because one person is the odd bird out for whatever reason in the clique of that department. So we've got to be careful with how we manage these kinds of things. But one of the most important things for me is always making sure that everybody on the team understands that everyone is replaceable. Stop acting out of pocket, right? Um,
Yeah, you
there are
could just
certain
implement a zero tolerance to any.
So it's not necessarily zero tolerance, but it's absolutely even-handedness with repercussions for actions. And one of the things that I find more and more is that it's not even always a peer-to-peer problem that is creating a crap environment with the organization.
Right.
A lot of times it's different positions that um look down and belittle other members of the team. Nurses to front desk people or MAs, doctors to everyone. You know what I mean? Like even specialists to primary care,
Hmm.
doctors to mid-levels, mid-levels to MAs or front desk people or orderlies. Like so there's a lot of disparity here, but when it comes to this kind of situation, you want to make sure that there is not any daylight between one person and another. Right? So this is a situation where, hey, let's say that the nurse is acting untowards to an MA. Just like you're going to take that nurse to the side and be like, stop it. We're not going to have that here. I'm not going to have this escalate. What's the problem? You need to be able to have that conversation with a doctor, with a nurse practitioner, because there's a lot of places I have seen that the providers run the show, even though they're not owners of the practice. and it's something to where it ruins the entire balance of the practice because the staff feel powerless in this situation because the providers just crap on somebody or one person, or it could be an office manager even, just craps on everybody. And so nobody wants to come to work, which creates a crap work environment, which then it just snowballs.
Spirals. Yeah.
It spirals so fast. So we've got to go and figure out what are the things that are going to make our practice better, right? And if you're an office manager, this is probably the most frustrating aspect of this entire thing because you can see where there are problems, but for certain aspects of operating a business, you're not empowered or backed up by the executive team. So you're not empowered to be able to actually reprimand employees. You're not actually able to reprimand or even fire poor acting personnel,
Hmm.
be they providers, be they front desk staff, be they cleaning staff. It doesn't matter. If I'm the office manager, right? What's that organizational hierarchy look like? Okay. If I'm an office manager and in our organizational hierarchy, I don't supervise the clinical employees, then who do I go to when there is a grievance? Having that clarity there is extremely important. Setting expectations early and following through is extremely important. This is like parenting. I've used this example 100 times before. Employees, patients, they're like our children. Sometimes we have to repeat things 4 or 5 times. Sometimes they will turn around after you've said no and go to mommy and be like, Mommy, did you ask daddy? Yeah. What did daddy say? No. You know what I mean? And then if that other person is not on the same page as you, what are you? You're not an office manager, you're a stupid advisor. Like
Yeah.
there's no power. They've completely taken away any role of enforcement. And there has to be a mix on that management aspect. Your team doesn't need to fear you, but they do need to respect the fact that you actually do have authority and can and will make decisions for the betterment of practice and the team. Right. And this is where you feel that frustration on admin because they don't have that power. They don't have the ability to do that. They don't have the ability to replace people because, maybe the problem child is a family member of one of the owners or the spouse of one of the providers, and it just creates all kinds of mess. So this is where, again, on when we onboard, if you are working with family, you want to make sure that, okay, at work, I'm not your brother. I'm not your father. I'm your boss. And if you have a large enough organization, you can even set it up to say, look, because of you being my family member, I am not going to be your boss. Bobby is your boss. All right. So if there's a problem, Bobby is going to handle it. And that way you keep that church and state relationship, right? At work, we're coworkers. I'm not your immediate boss. Hey, I don't have to be the bad guy, right? Other situations, it's like, screw it. No, we're not a big enough department, or I don't care. We can all act like professionals. And everybody always says, yeah, we can act like professionals until somebody doesn't feel like everybody's acting professional. And then all of a sudden it all goes crap, right? So it's all about that documentation. It's all about setting the expectations early and then following through, right? If there
Open
is
communication, you know.
open
I like the point
communication.
you made earlier about, employees should ultimately employees should feel comfortable, reporting those concerns without any fear, to these OSHA compliance officers and office managers.
Yeah. I mean, think about it like this. If your employees, whether valid or not, feel that there's preferential treatment to certain employees, you don't have a good work environment. If you
No.
don't have a good work environment, that can lead to high turnover, that can lead to crappy performance, that can lead to um, a lack of diligence and discipline. You have to be fair,
Right.
right? Rule for one is rule for all. And that's why it's so, so crucial that you set the standard as soon as people are walking in that door. Now, does that mean you can't change things down the road? Absolutely not. It just makes it harder. And if you are in a situation where you're like, hey, I like what these guys are saying, we need to implement some serious standards across the board, you need to be ready for pushback. And you need to be empowered to make the decisions that need to be made. It's not fun firing anybody. But if you need to fire somebody, you need to be able to do so. If they are someone that is important to your organization, then before you engage that conversation, you need to have a backup plan. Because what happens if you do have to fire a provider? What happens to all the patients on that provider schedule? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have somebody on deck that you can bring on board quickly or ramp up quickly? Or do you have coverage for the time being while you find somebody? Right. So there's a couple of different things that strategically an office manager, an executive is going to know, hey, when we implement these standards, I know how some people on the team are going to react. Right. Like if you don't have that instinct of, hey, Bobby's going to be fine with this because he's been wanting this. Susie may fight me a little bit, so I need to come in strong and confident. Uh, Tammy's going to fight me tooth and nail. You need to be ready for that. And if you need to find a replacement for Tammy, you need to be on the hunt before you implement. So that way you cut down that lead time and that stress on the rest of the team if you do have to fire Tammy,
No, that's a good point.
right? Because the last thing you want is for Tammy to just be toxic, creating a toxic environment at work to the point to where Susie comes in one day with a gun. What's worse, right? And you never know when that flip switches. You don't know what it was. It could be something completely benign in comparison to the abuse that they've dealt with before. That just, you know what? Today's that day. Tammy, it's on site. And anybody else that gets in the way, that's how it's going to go today. You know what I mean? Like you cannot. So the quickest way to deal with workplace violence is by keeping that tabs on your team and addressing pain points early. Address them often because this way and address them across the board. Hey, Bobby and David don't like each other. Why? Okay. They don't like each other because their personalities don't mesh. Okay, cool. That's absolutely normal. How are we going to manage this? All right, I'm going to talk to Bobby. I'm going to talk to David. And I'm going to let them both know, look, I understand that the both of you don't like each other. Is this something we can work through? This is an uncomfortable conversation to have. And the worst part is, you may have to have this conversation 3 times, once with David, once with Bobby, and once both of them together. However, the time that it takes to address the problem, the productivity you lose in addressing the problem early is insignificant to the festering wound that it can cause your organization. If you're on a quality model in your practice and your employees are grumpy, what do you think is going to happen to the patients? Are the patients going to get the best care possible to improve your quality score? Are they going to say great things about your team in their surveys? No, absolutely not. They're gonna be like, everybody's freaking grumpy. Everybody's pissed off, and I just got here. Like, well, I don't understand. And this is a common thing, especially the larger the organization, the worse the HR is handled. I feel like in healthcare, healthcare is decades behind private industry in regards to HR, in my opinion, and work culture. Now, it could be the hours, it could be the stress levels, it could be the high risk, high reward nature of the environment of the industry, but it doesn't matter. We need to address these things early, and we need to have policies and procedures so no one feels targeted, so you don't get a discrimination lawsuit, because those are the worst, right? Tammy feels like she's being picked on by
Or
management because Susie complained about Tammy bullying. Okay, well, we have a zero tolerance policy. This is what's happening, Tammy. You're going to be doing training. I'm writing you up. And then the next time this happens, you're out. You know what I mean? Like, you need to address across the board, but you also need to address everybody and be like, look, guys, we're done here. Just like when you get fed up with your kids. All right, putting my foot down. But when you put that foot down, you better follow through. If you create an ultimatum situation, you better follow through. If you do not follow through, absolutely, Tom, it is really hard to do when it's family, but I hate to say it, they're the first ones that need to understand that you're serious. And if they're family, I would actually argue not only is it even worse because they know that they're family, and so they may instinctively push boundaries more than they should, but it is crappy of them if they are putting you as a manager in this situation. And because
yeah,
they're family,
it's almost
you
like
should be able to sidebar them and tell them, hey, Bobby, you're killing me, Smalls. If you do this, Bobby, I have to come down on you because it's not fair to everybody else that you get to show up and this is something stupid, but I've seen it. Bobby, why are you always taking 20 minutes extra at lunch? Bobby, why do you get to show up late? Bobby, why do you get more days off? Bobby, why do you he does Bobby doesn't get more days off, but yeah, maybe he's showing up late. Maybe he's coming back from break late. And the perception of him having more days off seems like it, but he may not actually have more days off. He may not be given random days off, which I have also seen as well. But it's the perception now that's snowballing on top of his actual actions, right?
but you know who
Bobby,
looks
you're
bad
my.
overall is
It looks bad, but now there's a divide between family and non family.
yeah. Yeah.
And now you have an institutional problem because if you're family, you're protected, right? Protected because you're family, right? Nah, nah. I want everybody to understand, and this is a hard thing to do, but if you're going to be in management, you got to do it. You got to come down harder on them than anybody else. Because again, if you thought you had to be a parent with your all of your employees and all your patients before, if they're a family member, you got to come down on them real hard, real fast, and I hate to say making it public, but you need to make it understood that it is unacceptable, right? So if you've got to fire family, I hate to say it, Tom. I hate to say it to everybody, but I would rather fire a family member and maintain the familial relationship. So I'll fire them earlier than I will fire them later. And I've had to do it. It's not fun. I mean, it's even worse when you see them in every holiday or Christmas dinner and, you know, if they're, a brother or a sibling or something, then, maybe you're seeing them every weekend. But it's better that than anything else, right? There are other situations as well for what I'll do for those that it's just not a good fit for whatever the reason. I'll go and I'll take a look around and see if, hey, it's not a good fit here. You're just not a good fit. You're not a good fit with our culture, whatever the case may be, whatever excuse I want to use. But if I think that they're good employee, but they're not a good fit, I'll have them set up with interviews with somebody else. Hey, Bobby, I love you as a cousin, but I can't have you here.
So
You're messing with everything that I'm trying to do.
are you referring to
You're
just sort of a probationary period to figure that out? You know,
well, I
assuming
don't
that this
even
family
care.
member just got
It can
hired.
be again, this can be an employee where we're changing the work culture because we just went through an acquisition or a merger, or we
Gotcha.
just changed management, or there are different incentives coming down from on high. It
Gotcha.
doesn't matter what it is. But if somebody is not going to follow, and I think that they're a valuable employee in some way, shape, or form, I'll soften the blow of, hey, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. With here's someplace you can go,
Right.
right? So that this way, and I'm not going to do this for everybody. I haven't done this for everybody, but for certain people, I will do it. And it's again, it's merely a factor of what is important to the organization. Do I just want warm bodies? Then you're going to have high turnover. If I'm not going to set standards, I'm going to have high turnover and high frustration. High frustration leads to a powder keg. And again, if we're going to be talking about workplace violence, we got to talk about prevention of, not just management during. Management during is useless. The only thing that we can do is after action report and analysis. All right, Bobby and David, we didn't do anything. We didn't do shit. Bobby and David got into a fist fight. All right, now that we've broken it up, sent both of them home, suspended or fired both of them because it does not matter, right? Zero tolerance, right? How did we get here? And you have to be honest. If you want to fix the problems in the healthcare industry as a whole, but starting with your organization, you have to be able to be honest with the self reflection and the self diagnosis, right? Hey, I let this run its course too long. As the office manager, I probably should have jumped in 3, 4 weeks ago or when this event occurred, right? Even as a parent, I have 2 kids. They love to play together, but every once in a while they start fighting, right? Because they're brothers. I need to know that, okay, they started fighting because I didn't jump in and this led to this, that led to this. It's just how it goes. Now, on the after action, should I have jumped in earlier or should I have let it go? With my boys, I'm more than happy to let them,
I
hey, if you
say
start,
you're letting them yeah, he
I'll let it
started.
ride out for a hot second, right? But I can't do that at my office, and I
Yeah.
won't do that with my employees, right? Because now that we're talking about adults, we're talking about potential real consequences, not just character building concerns, right? Um, when we're talking about real consequences, we have to be able to follow through. So, like Tom was mentioning, it's hard with family. You're right, it really is. And that's why certain organizations actually have rules in their founding documents saying no family members. There's one long-term
Yeah.
client of ours that when they incorporated together these 3 specialists in their founding documents, they flat out said, it's okay to hire kids, it's okay to hire cousins, it's not okay to hire wives. None of the wives shall work for or with the business. Does not matter.
No, I've certainly seen those types of policies out there,
Right?
especially for
But
the
get
larger
but
organizations.
But it's one of those things where, hey, all right, this was addressed from the beginning, so everybody knew the expectation, so they didn't
True.
even try,
True.
right? Okay, maybe that's the way we want to go. Hey, no family members. Why? To avoid the problem that Tom was talking about, that potential or perceived conflict of interest. Okay, there we go. Problem solved. On to
Yeah.
the next one, right? But a lot of times, if you look at culture problems, it's because there is perceived or actual inequity in treatment of certain class of employees. I'm not even going to talk about race or gender or none of that stuff. It is usually job class, Providers get a little more protection and a little bit more leeway because they're more difficult to replace. That's not a way to run a business. It's a way to have a crap environment that causes crap results and it causes unnecessary stress among all. If anything, those protected classes need to understand even more, hey, I don't care. You have a higher responsibility because you are harder to replace. You don't have lower responsibility because you're harder to replace.
What should practices do, Jose, to it's almost we're talking about, employees that have been there almost like it, what about new hires? Maybe
New
there's
hires are the easiest to train. Probationary hires are the
what I'm
easiest to
saying,
train
input,
because either
right?
they're going to
Input,
follow through or you fire them,
right. But I'm saying
right?
implementing some of these things that we spoke on up front, especially the training. That's a OSHA federal requirement that, any new hire has to
Yep.
complete OSHA training within 10-day period.
Yep.
Workplace,
And HIPAA the first 30.
yeah, yeah,
So normally what I'll do is I'll really drill down on certain aspects, right? And it's themes because you can give them the hint, you can give them the training. And some of these patients don't remember what they had for lunch last week. I barely remember what I had for lunch on Saturday. It is Tuesday. Actually, hold on. I do not remember what I had for lunch on Saturday. So,
Chick-fil-A,
so you know what I mean? Like it's literally that simple, right? So if that is the case, then you need to keep it simple and just give them the tools to where they can't say, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that, Ossifer.
right.
Right? Like I didn't know that was a bad thing. Okay. Now, there are certain things that can also cause problems down the road when we talk about workplace violence and we're talking about hostile work environments. Are we a strictly business environment or are we a casual environment? The rule for one has to be the rule for all, right? So you can't be super casual with two or three of the employees and then be hyper strict with the rest. Even though you're holding them to the same rules, that standard is different now. You're letting some people be casual and some people not. Everybody, with everyone, you must be casual, or with no one, you must be casual.
Good
Does
point.
this make sense?
No, it does.
A lot of times I'll see, especially with organizations where battlefield promotions are common. Hey, you've been here the longest, so now you have been
Next man
elevated
up.
from. Yeah, you're next man up, and I've seen it to where, hey, this person started at 18 as front desk and now at 30 they're office manager because they've been here 12 years, and they just know where all the bodies are buried. But that doesn't mean they're doing everything right. It doesn't mean that they don't mean to do everything right. It's just they may not have the tools.
Right.
They may not know. So this is where sadly more investment on the team is beneficial long term, right? And understanding that, okay, if I'm in upper management and I just gave somebody a battlefield promotion, they just went to happy hour at karaoke with their now subordinates last week.
True, it's perception.
Well, it's not even just perception. It's I need to work with this battlefield promotion and teach them how to make that transition happen because that can cause internal issues as well. It can cause morale issues. It can cause discipline issues. I mean, if it happens in the military, it happens in the civilian
It causes
environment. If it,
workplace
you know what I mean, like
violence.
it happens everywhere. You go from being one of the guys to all of a sudden you're team captain on aren't you fancy team captain? Oh, you were just one of us peasants and now you're shift lead. Ooh la la. You know what I mean? Like the jokes write
Yeah,
themselves,
yeah.
and If you have an environment where that ribbing can occur, but we can still be professional, so you've managed to walk that tightrope, understand that when people fall off the tightrope, you need to come down on them just to maintain, hey, this is that narrow band we've decided to walk on. I've had situations in our office. We run a rather casual environment because most of us are Hispanic, so we're relatively loud and friendly people. And so that has caused problems. And I have had to address the team and say, hey, guys, if someone is going to complain about this, when someone else just did the same thing, either both parties have to be reprimanded, or this is just going to die on the vine and I'm going to walk away. And I let my team know I don't care which way we go, but it has to be the same for everyone. If we're going to be casual, we have to be casual for everyone. If someone is allowed to make a slightly off color joke, we need to set the standard for what is, hey, that's outside the boundaries versus, hey, this is inside the boundaries. You know what I mean? Like, just as there are certain things in the office that we don't discuss. We don't discuss pay with coworkers. We don't, you know what I mean? We don't discuss religion with coworkers unless it's something, hey, if you want to come out to my Christmas thing, or you know what I mean? Like something like that. But
Sure.
we don't discuss this versus that. You know what I mean? Like that's not happening. We don't discuss politics in our office. We discuss policy in regards to what is happening in our industry that affects our day-to-day lives. That we absolutely discuss because we may have to shift our business model or certain protocols based on DEA regs, based on CMS guidelines, based on ATF rulings, based on CMS, FDA. Like shoot, just literally today I was reading an article. FDA is getting crap because pulse oximeters apparently show a bias towards tan people.
What?
If I read that wrong, you're telling me that pulse oximeters are racist?
Uh,
What? No. But the pulse oximeters, because apparently different different tanness of skin, because pulse oximeters work off of light, apparently, something I didn't know either. They get different readings. So what happens? Well, it means that if we base everything just off the pulse oximeter, that patient may not qualify for a specific kind of treatment because it misread. That's wild. So how do we deal with this? Well, we find other symptoms. We confirm with another tool.
sure.
It's a situation where we got to have standards, we got to have protocols, we got to have backups.
Jose, I might have spoken to you. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit back to what you're mentioning about the political aspect. Um, I think I might have mentioned this in a webinar in the past, but there was a situation where one of our clients' employees
I don't know which
was
example you're talking
posting
about.
on they were posting on their personal Facebook their political
Yeah,
views, and I think a staff member saw that and reported
yeah,
it, and it,
it's a
it
whole
kind of
thing.
yeah, it kind of spiraled into, well, can I is this grounds to fire this person or not? And
This is very simple. This is very, very simple.
it's
First
good
Amendment.
case study for this particular
Yeah, yeah.
conversation.
But I'm going to keep it very, very simple. The First Amendment applies to citizens and government, not citizens as employees.
Hmm.
As in, if I'm a private organization and you are an employee and you say something that is wildly out of pocket, you can absolutely be penalized for that. I have no problems with this. But the standard needs to be set early and it needs to be consistent. And the best way to say it is this: I don't care what you do on your own time, just don't have our team logo on it. You want to go protest a Tesla dealership? Knock yourself out, boo boo. Don't wear our logo. Do it on your own time. You want to go to January 6th? I don't care. Call in, use your sick time, but I don't want to know about it and I don't want my logo there.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like it's very, very simple. Very, very
So
simple.
what if they state that they work for your organization on their personal Facebook and they're making those types of posts? I'm at the Tesla
I mean,
protest.
it's really a matter of at that point, hey, what our employees do on their own time as long as they're following the laws of the land. You know what I mean? Like it's none of my business. It doesn't affect the way that they work.
Fair.
'Cause- You know what I mean? Like I don't have a right as the representative of an organization to how can I put this? To dictate how someone lives their life. I can only get
That's
involved.
ultimately what it came down to this particular situation is, they're not
No,
adver
that particular situation is stupid. You
yeah.
need to you need to have a little bit more awareness, right? Like you if you're going to be sitting there and doing something like this, then you need to be able to have the awareness of, hey, this might cause an issue with these people. Maybe I don't let them have access to my personal social media.
In hindsight, exactly. I mean, why would why would you befriend? You have that, you have the authority to accept or not accept a person. So,
Exactly. And honestly, if I'm being 100% honest, I don't like management being social media friends with employees that they supervise.
yeah, I can agree with that.
I don't like it. It's icky to me. It causes blurred lines. It can color my opinion of them. And I should not care because as long as they do their job and they're not committing any crimes, then what they do on their free time is none of my bloody business.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they could be a 49ers fan and I'm gonna have to bite my tongue on it, like
Jose's gonna
um
fire him right there on the
yeah, I'm not
spot.
gonna fire him because they're a 49ers fan, like I might look at him a little bit funny, and I don't so it's absolutely one of those things, So how do we the biggest thing for me is transparency. And that's what it always comes back to transparency and proactiveness. If you're proactive on the management side, it's hard for the employees to say, I didn't know I couldn't do that, which means then you can actually
Absolutely.
drop the hammer early and nip all of these problems in the bud. And ironically, solving the problems with the employees could solve some of the problems with the patients. So you have less likelihood of those scenarios occurring with the patients.
No, absolutely.
So we're reaching that time. If anybody's got any questions, please feel free. I highly recommend, though, if you are using Epi Compliance or you're using a different vendor for your policies and procedures, review what the workplace violence ones are. Make sure that you're training your team on it and that they are aware. Hey, this doesn't just refer to physical violence. This doesn't just refer to gun violence. This refers to anything that can be perceived as violence.
Yeah, refer to your OSHA training as well, because I
Yeah,
know
I
there's
mean,
some
it's all
OSHA
over the
training.
place. It's
Yeah,
in HIPAA security.
yeah,
It's in
yeah.
OSHA. It's I want to say it's even mentioned in OIG, honestly. Right? So
I
like,
know our OSHA training does include workplace violence. If you're an EPI compliance customer, we do offer an active shooter training now upon request, as well as a sexual harassment course. If you are an EPI compliance pro user, please feel free to message me, or you can put something in chat. We can talk about getting that implemented for your practice. But our OSHA course will cover the standard, workplace violence, workplace safety protocols as well.
definitions are important, guys. They're absolutely important. Clarity is important. You cannot hold someone accountable if they do not know what the rule is. If you feel like a question, will we receive a certification of attendance for this training? Tom, this isn't CE. This is where we merely have a conversation about different topics that come up on a weekly manner. Um, what we try to do is just offer value to the community. And if you've got specific questions or anything of that nature, we're more than happy to speak about it offline and speak more in the hyper specifics, right? So if you go and check out our YouTube page, we've got how many now, Ray? Almost 100.
This is episode 70.
Yeah. So
We almost have
we're
100
reaching
subscribers.
close to 100 where we talk about a variety of different topics in regards to compliance and the healthcare industry and all kinds of things, honestly, but it's all healthcare related. So,
I'm gonna say, Tom, if you're looking for any specific training, please feel free to message us.
yes, yes. If you're looking for certificates in regards to actual, hey, point by point training, that's where Epi Compliance would come into play with the training platform. Separately from there, you would get a certification. Separately from there, you can use these podcasts as a method of starting the conversation with your team, and you can consider that ongoing training as long as you track it and you have a log of who attended as ongoing training throughout the year, so it can meet that requirement for OSHA and for HIPAA security. Hey Tom, we try to bring value, honestly,
Appreciate
and we
that,
try to
Tom.
make it not boring. So hopefully we achieve those goals, and hopefully we'll see you next week and weeks to come. So
We do got a
um
nice another OSHA topic next week. Um,
yeah, all right. So I'm forgetting which one's next week.
so we've recently, it's a lot of our clients here on the East. Again, we're Jose and I are located here in Florida, but we've been getting a lot of clients as of recent that are undergoing some OSHA inspections, and a few of them in particular on hazardous waste standard. Um, so we were gonna sort of expound on, you know, is there going to be more OSHA audits in the year 2025? Um, and sort of expound from there. Jose, do you want to add to?
No, nothing right now. I'm looking forward to next week, and
It
as is
just
every
seems
week,
it
it'll
seems like
be
this year there's just been increased activity. That's all.
yeah.
Let's dive in and
Well,
see if there's any new expectations, um, or
it's
enforcement priorities. Like I said, these there's been a few that have been specifically in Florida for hazard communication. So find that interesting.
in-depth training in hazardous waste, and what do you mean by that specifically, Pamela? I'd be more than happy to put that on the docket. Are you referring to like the SDS and managing that aspect, or are you talking um a little bit more about PPE? Like what do you want to lean into? Because we could do hours on hazardous waste, sadly.
I mean, hazardous waste would be a good Todd. I don't think we've discussed that yet. We've done electrical safety before. We've done needle sticks. We can talk,
Yeah, I mean, like we can
we can
go we
go.
can go deep, 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 deep into it. And then that's not even talking about bloodborne pathogens and all that fun stuff, right? So when we're talking about hazardous waste, again, like give us a little bit more, and then we can really cater that towards that and probably do it here, what, in the next 3 weeks, right?
Oh yeah. No, we're pretty we're pretty wide open this month right now. We got next week, but we are going to bring Rick Acevedo back on in May. But yeah, for the remainder
Tom,
of
that
this
might be a
month.
good one for you as well. If you can, last week was it with Rick or was it 2 weeks?
Yeah, last week was with Rick.
Okay. So yeah, Pamela, my team does get the DOT training, but I don't know actually. Okay, yeah. So we can go into all that stuff. And I can even, if you'd like, I can even go into we can even look into pros and cons of having a vendor that handles the actual disposal, right? So rather than having one of your team members go and take it to wherever it needs to
Zero
go,
cycle
you
or
know, yeah, having a vendor that
one of
that comes in
those.
and handles all that stuff. Um yeah, that's not a problem at all. I mean, it's something to where we can even discuss it in regards to I do have a vendor who
Not,
does disposal and did okay, all right, perfect. Okay. Yeah, that's the easiest way to do it. I wouldn't want to deal with the actual disposal because that's
I was gonna
messy.
say, man, I was
Um,
thinking for a second I could maybe try to get one of our. We have a couple partners that are in the medical waste industry. Maybe try to get them
yeah,
on.
let's
Um,
let's see if let's see how we put it together. Pamela, I would definitely say keep be on the lookout. I imagine that we'll be able to knock it out this month. So obviously not today, but I think there's three more Tuesdays in the month, so we'll knock it out this month for you, and we can really dive into it. And if we end up bringing one of the vendors that we work with on, you can ask them like more specific questions or anything like that. So.
yeah, we have
But
a
like I was saying
vendor
with
that
Rick
specifically
and
does the
the
med
IT,
waste.
Tom, yeah, Tom. So if you want to look up an IT, pretty helpful IT conversation that we had last week with Rick Acevedo, it can give you a way to guide and honestly account what your IT department is doing or what your IT vendor is doing, which for me is the biggest thing, right? Because I don't have time to manage the business and my people and the employees and a vendor working on something that I am literate but not savvy, right? So the conversation with Rick was very much how do we have those conversations? How do we hold IT accountable for different aspects of the business since nowadays healthcare is so meshed in with IT.
Yeah, if anybody else has any suggested topics you think we should cover, let us know. Especially if it's something that's going on in particular to your practice. We'd love to
Yeah, absolutely.
discuss.
Absolutely. Well, if there aren't any more, then
Well, Jose, let's see.
there
I
aren't any
put,
more questions, then I'm looking forward to next week where we can talk about
yeah, no,
um that
likewise,
OSHA.
we can expound on those. I'll try to get a little more intel, and we can sort of dive into these case studies and what we're doing for for these clients to um, sort of push it through. Because again, they're
Yeah,
going through inspection, they got a certain amount of time frame to submit what they need to submit. So kind of walk through that process.
yeah, it'll be fun. I mean, fun for us.
Oh,
If
it's
you get
always
that
fun for
letter,
us.
it's not normally. Do you sign up for
So
these webinars through Epic Compliance?
Pam, you're gonna actually what I'll do is I'll provide you will receive correspondence with next week's registration link, but if you would like to bookmark a page, I'm gonna link it over here in chat. Now, if you try to register right now, this is for today's event. This is gonna change very soon, but just pay attention to the dates on here. But you can bookmark this page. This is where you would go to register for our webinars. But again, you will also receive an email. Usually it'll go
There's
out
a
to
lot of different ways, right? Because we
yeah,
do
you'll receive
the
an email.
email, we have
Yeah,
the YouTube page, we have that website, and then you
I,
create another link as
I make a
well.
LinkedIn post. I mean, we try we try
Yeah,
to
we try to put it
advertise
everywhere. I
this as much
mean,
as possible.
what is it? There's also another one that you do. What's that
Sometimes,
meeting? What's that meeting website that you were keeping up with? Um, God,
uh,
blanking on it.
well, we send
You do a
out.
lot of marketing. Let's
I
just
was
put it
gonna
that
say
way.
we do a lot of marketing. This that link that I sent over is our general webinar page. As I mentioned, it will change tomorrow to the it'll update to the latest webinar where you click on the link and you can register. You also receive email correspondence as well. That will provide a link to the to register for next week's webinar session as well. Yes, I do a
And
LinkedIn
Pamela and Tom
post.
on the YouTube channel as well. We have some videos about some of the functionality that Epic Compliance has. So if you ever have any questions, unless you want to just call Ray up, that's fine too. But if some of those things can be handled through there too, so
Yeah, no,
you
if
can just take a look at the
compliance
library.
is something that you're looking into, that's essentially what we're here for at Epi Compliance. We provide healthcare compliance solutions. So if that is a need of yours, if you're interested in taking a look at our platform, please feel free to get in touch. Always here to help.
Perfect, guys. Well, then if that's it, then I'll see you guys next week.
Sounds good, Jose. I appreciate your insights as always. And everyone, I appreciate you for taking the time out of your day. I hope you found this valuable, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Have fun. Stay out of trouble.
Take care.
Bye.